do we expect, Tanya, do we expect more members of the budget committee to attend? Have we heard from everybody?
We've heard from everybody and everyone is accepted.
Okay, except for Herb?
Correct.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's 9:31. I would like to call the January 19th, 2022 Lane County Budget Committee meeting to order. Committee business is the first order on the agenda.
Staff does not have any business, so this would be left up to the committee if you have anything that you would like to bring up.
Are there any committee members who have anything to bring up at this time? Hearing none, we could move to the next item of the agenda, which is the Elected Officials Compensation Board. I'd like to welcome everybody here and welcome particularly Joshua Burstein and Darcy Dillon to the meeting and invite you to take us through your evaluation.
Thank you and good morning to the Budget Committee. My name is Alana Holmes and I'm the Chief Human Resources Officer here at Lane County. I'm here today with members of the Elected Officials Compensation Board, as well as Darcy Dillon, who is a Senior Workforce Analyst in HR who staffs the board. The purpose of this meeting is to provide recommendations regarding the salaries of Lane County elected officials in accordance with the charge of the board as outlined in Lane Manual. Lane Manual 3.705 sets the scope of the Elected Officials Compensation Board to recommend to the Budget Committee and to the Board of County Commissioners a compensation schedule for county elected officials. So the order of items this morning will be for you to hear first from the EOCB Chair, Josh Burstein, and members of the board on analysis and recommendations. And then Christine Moody will run through the costing of that information for you. So at this time, I want to turn it over to Josh, who will introduce the members that are with him today and kick off the process. Josh?
Great. Thank you, Alana, and good morning, everybody. As I say every time, it's an honor to serve the county this way, and I appreciate all of you taking the time to hear from us. The first thing I will do, as Alana just said, is introduce our committee, and I do see at least two of my fellow board members on the call. My name is Josh Burstein. I'm the chair this year of the board. I also am the HR manager at Lane Council of Governments, and I always make a point to say that my work here on the board, though I think I was discovered through LCOG, and obviously we work closely with the county and other entities, does not affect, because there is a board member of LCOG is from the county. I always just want to make that a point that the LCOG board, our executive director is Brenda Wilson, but that even though I report to her, I don't have influence over the county commissioner who is on the board of LCOG that hires her. So I always just want to say that up front as a disclosure. With me today is Penelope or Penny Doherty, who is the retired director of AA and EO Affirmative Action and Equal Opportunity at University of Oregon. Penny, do you want to say anything to introduce yourself, or is that good enough? That's good. Okay. Also, another member of the board who I don't see on the call right now is Sherry Ballard, who is Vice President of HR for the University of Oregon Foundation.
Sherry's here.
I'm here, but my video's not working. Is my audio working all right?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. I see you now on my board.
Thank you. Good to be here.
You think after almost 2 years of this, I'd be able to figure out everyone on the call, but there's still extras on the side. So, and then we have 5 members on the board. One is vacant, but the fourth position, which we're very fortunate to have filled this year. I'm very excited with Janice Reynolds, who is the Director of HR at United Way of Lane County. And I see her somewhere, or I did.
Good morning, Josh. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Janice. Good to see you. I know you've seen the memo from us, and I will kind of take us through quickly the recommendations, And then the kind of takeaway at the end, I'll turn over to Christine, as Alana said, in terms of the cost. But spoiler alert, just to kind of state up front, we are very strongly recommending to the Budget Committee to then recommend, of course, to the board to true up these positions. You've probably heard us say this in years past. I know we've had a robust discussion around that, and that the Budget Committee itself, and the Board of County Commissioners has as well. But we, being the HR professionals, are kind of sticking to what we look at and see and want to recommend, and hope that you can understand where we're coming from. And we'll try to get that a little clearer through the memo that you've seen, and also what we're saying today. I will also ask my fellow board members if there's any point you want to jump in with anything I'm saying. I know we've talked about all this together, and I appreciate your confidence in me to present it, but please do feel free. I'd say just jump in because I can't see everyone's hands. But with that, I will go ahead unless anyone has anything urgent right before I start. Seeing nothing and some nods. Good. Okay.
So Josh,
Oh, sorry. Yes.
Josh, this is Darcy, just to interrupt you. I want to introduce myself. I'm Darcy Dillon. I'm the Senior Workforce Analyst at Lane County. So you might hear me pipe in. This is me right here. And then Josh as well, if there's, I will try to pull up attachments as you're referring to them. But if there's something that you need me to pull up, just ask or just tell me and I'll do that, because I have I can share my screen at any time.
I appreciate that. And sorry, Darcy, I should have said at the very beginning how grateful we are to Lane County staff, Alana and everyone else, and particularly Darcy for being our lifeline from the board to the group here. So yes, Darcy, please do feel free as well to interrupt, because you know this stuff as well as, if not better, than we do. On that note, just to let you know, we've introduced to the committee that our board held 2 public meetings to study and deliberate compensation for the elected officials here in Lane County. Those were on August 18, 2021 and September 29 of 2021 on virtual meeting status, Zoom or Teams. You might recall in 2020, the Budget Committee recommended no increases, and the board also ordered no increases, and that's an attachment 2. So with the memo we sent, there were 8 attachments, and attachment 1 was a little bit of the history of the board, but attachment 2 was just as a reminder for the past, what you did the last time that we presented. So if there are no questions on that, I will keep moving. So one thing just one other quick reminder, one thing we do in HR a lot is we look at positions and not people. And that, you've probably heard us say that before, but basically we look at our job on this board to really figure out what is right, what is needed to make the elected officials here be compensated correctly, adequately, or more than adequately. Appropriately is probably a better word to use. We have, you know, some of the ways we do this with compensation surveys. You've seen this before, again, from the county. And again, we thank them for their help. Our main focus is to maintain equitable and competitive compensation. The thinking is that people, including some who are on this call, of course, give a lot to serve the public. And why someone would want to run for any office or be elected, I'm not sure. I'm just kidding. But it's an honor, but I know that, but also it's something so important for our county to run right and run well. And so our goal is really to keep it as a competitive labor market, to true up positions, or true up the compensation, excuse me, so positions will not continue to fall further behind as they have, as you know, from past years. We want to be able to recruit people to run and serve and retain them in these positions to keep our county going as fast as possible. It's no secret how the last 2 years have been. Obviously, one thing that we've seen even more from when we started meeting and had those 2 public meetings is the cost of living, the CPI, for those who are familiar with that term. There's attachment 4, thank you, Darcy, has in the last few months particularly skyrocketed. So if anything, our recommendations are even more urgent. You will see CPI is going to even the 7% range and things like that. So We use the same methodology, just to move on a little bit of how we did what we did. We matched the average total compensation of market comparators, and what those were, again, the same counties: Clackamas County, Deschutes County, Jackson County, Marion County, and Washington County. And this is what we've done before. It works well in our minds. You have some counties, let's say Clackamas and Washington, that might be a higher cost of living per se because of their location closer to Portland. You have Deschutes and Jackson, which might be lower, in Marion County, which is similar to us. And when you look at comparators in the HR world, you look at a lot of different things, among them, and this is in the report, attachment 3, is if you look at that and we go through each position there, at the top you will see the list of counties. So just the first page is the assessor position, and you'll see we use things like county population, county FTE. Darcy is highlighting those right now. Budget, and then some notes, things like that, to kind of figure out, are we looking at the correct comparators? And we feel that we are. And the idea of looking at not just 1 or 2, but 5, and even 5 with potential outliers a little bit, really helps get us to the right numbers, we feel. The other thing we do when you're looking at compensation surveys in HR is what's called internal equity. So you have the external relations or the external comparators, then what's called internal equity. And some of the things we look at for that include things like salary compression, which is attachment 6, I think. Darcy, is that? Oh, you're already there. Thank you. And I'll explain that, and then also attachment 5, which I'll get to in a minute, about director salaries. Actually, let's start with that since that's up right now. So one thing we look at is what the position is, the elected position that we're looking at, and that's the first column there. And then what the top, how do I say this right? The top person in that, hang on, let me just send that to voicemail, sorry.
Subordinate
Position, I'm sorry. So below that top position, the subordinate position there. And that, hold on, I'm sorry, you're on attachment 6. Let me turn my page. There we go. So the thinking there is, on the wrong page, 6, thank you. That by law, there's only one of the elected officials, sheriff, that has to be, sorry, thanks, going back to 6 now, that needs to be paid higher than the subordinate. But it's also a good practice in general in HR that if you have the top person, they should, and there'll be some differences there when you look at some other professional type positions. Sometimes you have lawyers or doctors, health, et cetera. But for the most part, we kind of look at both the external comparators I mentioned before and internal issues like this here. These are some of the attachments that go to the internal issue. Anything on any of that? I know I'm going a little quickly, but I know you've hopefully read the memo and have seen some of this before. Okay. I don't see any questions. Okay. One note to make before we get into a little more detail for the positions is we're looking at recommendations effective the first full pay period after January 1, 2022 for non-board positions, and then after January 1, 2023 for commissioners. And obviously we're already past January 1, 2022 where we're at now, but that's what our charge was as the 2021 EOCB. Darcy, do you want to say a word about why the difference between the non-board positions and the commissioner positions on that one?
Absolutely. The Lane manual requires us to make decisions or make effective the commissioner salary changes after a general election. So we can't make them at this point for 2022. The soonest they could go into effect would be 2023.
Perfect. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions on that? Great. Thank you, Darcy. Oh, and one other issue before I move into the our recommendations is we had been meeting, I believe, every 2 years previously, but we learned, I think, from either the administrator, Mokrahysky, or from council a year or 2 ago-ish, that we actually we're required to meet annually. And so it may or may not be changes, but just to let you know, we'll then have to meet again later this year or early next year and go through this process again. But I just wanted to, that's a little bit new to those of you who have been on this call before. Okay. So again, spoiler alert, if you look at the last page of the memo, attachment 8, that's our recommendations. You can see the numbers are high in some ways, and our view on that in terms of truing up is that just shows how far behind we are. You will see as Christine goes through it after I finish my presentation that there's also in attachment 7 the cost numbers for what we believe we're recommending in terms of the truing up, but also for potential 2% or 3% COLAs, which are based on other staff and other people at the county. So that's another list of numbers for you. But again, we're focusing on what we believe should be done, just truing up, even though that does look high. So let's go through. This is back to attachment 3 now. Sorry to jump around so much, but you have it in front of you, and thank you, Darcy, for having it up here. What we did, and I won't go through every line and every number and every detail, of course, but the couple of quick things on comparators, since we're looking at those now as well. There's a trend towards sometimes substantial increases. So I know that particularly when COVID hit in that first year, there was a lot of uncertainty about a lot of things, and I think there was a understandable reluctance to make big changes. You will see the 5 comparators there, and as we go through each of the positions for those comparators, you'll see that all 5 awarded COLAs in 2021 ranging from 1.5 to 2%. I believe we were 0%. Is that the right year that there was a vote for no increase? Darcy, help me here.
It would help if I unmute. Yes.
So our point in just bringing that up is, in a sense, that even other counties in the first year of the pandemic did see a need to at least try to maintain a COLA. And so again, that's part of our recommendations to true up. And then some awarded market adjustments on top of COLAs. And of course, every situation is different. And so, that's one reason you look at 5 comparators and try to find the average. Starting with the first one, the assessor, if I could just jump into it then. You can see current salary is about 120. When we look at 120,000, I should say, paid significantly less than subordinates when we went back to that attachment 6 and 5. I don't know you need to jump to that, Darcy. I think we can just stick on this page for now.
Josh, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So I want to orient the group here to how to read this chart real quick, because there are new folks that have not ever seen this. So as Josh said prior, the county comparators are listed first and all of their data. And then the green column is Lane County's information. And then when we get down to it, Josh will very quickly be focusing your attention down to the yellow highlighted, but that's basically how you read this. The comps 2021 average, which is the next to the green column, is the average of the comparators, all of their averages. And then the comps versus Lane County is the percent in and out of market that our position is compared to our 5 county comparator average. And this is on a total compensation basis, which is directed for us to do in our lane manual.
Thank you. Sorry, when we're in the numbers and the nitty gritty so much, we forget that we want to actually make this sensible to people. So I appreciate that, Darcy. One thing I will point out, as you look at the green column there, Lane County, if you look at the bottom, and I think Darcy mentioned this already, you'll see, and you'll see this with the other ones as well, the total comp numbers that, with that yellow, that shows the percentage behind we are. And then at the underneath that in the green on the current screen there, you will see the new base salary increase needed and adjusted total comp. And one thing I just want to point out about that, a lot of people look at salary only, but of course what we are looking at is total comp. So a lot of the other specific lines that you see there, a lot of those numbers, that goes to things like not just salary and COLAs, but things like vacation and sick leave, holidays, housing allowances, auto allowances, benefits, obviously health insurance. So when we look at, in the HR world, we talk about total compensation. It's not just salary, but what we're suggesting is the changes to the salary to bring people up. Any questions on that? I know I'm going fast, but I want to be able to get through this and be able to answer questions later and have Christine give a little more sense of the cost. Okay.
I have
Yes,
a question, if I may.
Commissioner Bernie. Yeah.
Is there any way to make these charts larger?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Commissioner, I believe you can do that. If you hit control with your scroll bar on your mouse, you'll be able to zoom into it.
Control. Okay. Thank you. And I'm sorry, everyone, for the interruption.
Don Leslie, if I can I just call on people if that's okay? Okay, thanks. Yeah.
I have a question about just noticing the zeros. We don't provide vacation or sick leave to the assessor. Am I understanding this correctly?
Let me see.
Correct. You are correct. None of our elected officials have time off.
Thank you.
Darcy, this is Christine. Other than I would say their pay does not change if they take a day off. So
I see.
So you're still paid every day, right? Yeah.
Whereas in other counties, they have specifically structured it differently.
Perfect.
Okay.
Great. Thank you for those questions. So let me just look at my notes for a minute. Oh, we did talk about total comp and what that means. And the recommendation here, just again, being able to get through all of them, you could see is when you look at the numbers, the quote truing up is it would need a 10.2% increase there to get to match the average of the 5 comparators. That's what you look at when you're looking at comparators. And then the reason it's 10.72%, thank you, Darcy, for highlighting that, is based, actually, you could probably explain it better, but it's based on, because of the other pieces of total comp, to actually get to the average, the actual percent increase needs to be a little bit higher than just the number above. Darcy, could you explain that for a second, actually?
Absolutely. Yeah, so the calculation is based off a total comp. So you have to back into what the needed salary increase would be in order to end up at the total comp number at the bottom. So typically it is this 10.72 is larger than the minus 10.2% that the total comp is under market. And you will see a little different scenario with the justice of the peace, and that has to do with I think the prorations and the different benefit packages that the JOPs have.
Good. Let's jump to district attorney first. We'll leave commissioners for last, just because it's more fun that way.
Josh, can I step in for a second?
Sure.
So I think one of the things with the assessor that is really important to point out is the inversion, as we say, or compression with the subordinates here. And so I would say, and you can see it here, I want to show you first the compression for this position, because it is really a big issue. So currently, the assessor is paid 10.7% less than the highest paid subordinate. So that is really out of, I think, out of structure. It's an out of structure issue. And these rates here include the most recent COLA and market adjustments that we just awarded to our non-reps, the first full pay period in January. So you can see that it could be problematic. I think for the EOCB, it definitely is a concern. What the attachment 3 at the bottom shows is that after the pay adjustment of 10.72%, there will still be a negative differential with the deputy assessor, which, by the way, is vacant right now. I honestly don't know what the status of that is, if we are going to fill it. The assessor is not retiring and he is running for re-election. This position was created as basically a stepping stone, potentially career progression for somebody to work alongside with the assessor for when we thought he was going to retire. So this may actually go away, but more importantly is that the property tax manager, it will create a 4.3% differential with that property tax manager position, which is good. Obviously, best practice would be more in the 5% or higher, but we like to see this.
Great, thank you for adding that in. And one quick note, and you'll see this when we get to sheriff, that like I said before, sheriff is the only one under the law that must be paid more than the or at least as much as the number 2 person, but is, as we said before, best practice for that to happen in general. Let's move to district attorney. That one's a little bit unusual. And this is still in attachment 3. Oh, there you go. Thank you, Darcy. The one thing that's a little bit unusual is that the DA is paid from 2 pots, basically county money, but also state money. And so where is that on the top of that? Where's the, so when you see, well, so let's go to the bottom where we talk about the, where, hold on.
Excuse me, could we, I know this goes against the earlier request, but I think yeah, thank you. By bringing it into a larger focus, we lost the side, we lost the column heading. So thank you for shrinking it back down again.
Great. You'll see, I'm trying to figure out the best way to present this at the top, or the current, I'm sorry, yeah, it's the top of that section, sorry, under compensation, base salary, and you'll see under lane it's 46,000. Our DA is paid more than 46,000. That's just the part from the county, in addition to what the state adds in. So when we go to the bottom numbers, under DA, you could see that it's a 14, sorry. Yeah, those bottom, yeah, right. So that percentage there, that 28.4%, while of course 20% sounds high, it's based on just the county portion of the pay. So it's a lower number, so obviously it's a higher percentage to true it up. Does that make sense? You have more dollars to true it up, so it's a higher percentage because you're starting with a lower number. There is no compression issue here. The DA is paid more than the direct reports, including the chief deputy DA. I mentioned the 28.4. The comparators are a little bit unusual here. There's a large difference due to different combinations of COLAs and market adjustments and changes in compensation philosophy. Clackamas County, for example, instituted a 10% minimum between subordinates. Again, that's the reason we look at 5 counties. So if there's anything unusual in 1 or 2, we still kind of get to an average there. So again, at the bottom of the recommendation is, well, the 28.4, which means really 32.17 on that bottom number. Again, for the reasons that Darcy explained, the actual percentage increase usually is a little bit higher than what we're the number that we're too low by, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with this one, it has to do with the state piece of the salary. And so a larger percentage, I mean, we can only increase our stipend. We can't adjust the state piece. So that's why it's higher.
Perfect. Let's move to justice of the peace, if we could. This is also a little bit of an unusual situation because our justice of the peace is a 0.5 FTE position. And as you can see at the top, let me see, it's about 6 lines down. Some are, Clackamas, for example, is a full 1.0 position. Deschutes is 0.6. The others are also 1.0. So, you know, we look at what in HR you do is you look at what a total salary would be, and then if the position itself is 0.5 FT, then obviously it's half of that. So just in case the numbers look a little funny that way, what we did again is reviewed comparability with other counties, as you saw at the top, based on other things like FTE, et cetera. We did see that, or we still felt, excuse me, that the job duties were the same or similar to other counties. So we felt comfortable going ahead with the 5 county comparators. And again, to move to align this with total comp at the bottom, you will see that's again a 19.4%, or we're below by 19.4%. And then this is one of those cases where actually the recommended change is actually even is a little bit less than that instead of more, which is 19.15%, or $9,200 and change, almost $9,300.
Joshua, this is Christine Moody. I just want to do a time check for us.
Yes.
We are at 10 o'clock and we have just a half an hour for also them to have questions and deliberation.
Excellent. Thank you, Christina. I know I'm going to ask you to pull in at the end to talk about attachments 8 and 7. So in the interest of time then too, Sheriff, just moving to that, and then we'll move to commissioners. Sheriff, again, this is the one list law requirement, ORS requirement to pay more. There's a number of unusual things that come up here too, different from others, certification pay or not, things like that. But again, it all gets looked into as we look at 5 comparators. Used average of total comp here, we're recommending a 13.16% increase at the bottom to make up for that 12.7 deficit. And then the other thing just to note here is if no increase is awarded at the time for the sheriff, the pay would have to be adjusted by county staff if the chief deputy receives a merit increase in April, and that's again by law. So even if nothing has happened, is done from our end here, you can see that the numbers there would be that there would have to be by law a change anyway to sheriff. Let's move to commissioners, and then I'll wrap up and then have Christine look at some numbers for you, and then hopefully we can answer some questions. As you know, with commissioners, there's been a history of few or no increases. The last increase was 2% in 2020. And there is an attachment 1, which I won't go through right now, but there is a history of years prior to that. Current commissioner salary is $87,869, which we see as a 25%, actually over 25% under market, that yellow number there that you see. So to true up, we are recommending what would be actually a 27.15% increase, $23,856. I won't say much more. I know we've gone through these conversations in the past. I will say that of all the comparators, Lane County is the lowest and by far. Let me wrap up with some of our key messages, and then Christine, I'll turn to you if you will. Again, we're looking at it from, with our HR glasses on. We understand that, and we have that privilege to not ourselves be elected officials. But we really do believe that truing up is necessary. We think that in terms of recruitment, getting people to run for office, be appointed to if there's an opening, and to retain people and good quality people like we have, that we really need to true up. That said, we also live in reality and know the past conversations we've had with you, and so we would ask as well for feedback or assistance if there's a philosophy or a plan on how to reach comparator compensation levels if it can't be done all in 1 year. So we go in the nitty gritty and look at all these numbers and then try to present it to you in a way that we think makes sense, but we also recognize that these are big numbers. And so as part of any conversation, we would welcome a discussion on what we can do or help, or what you all think would be a good way or a good philosophy to try to get to where we think we should all be. With that note, I will turn to Christine if that's all right with everyone. Cool, thank you.
All right, thank you, Joshua. So attachment 7 in the packet that you received does include costing. So what we provide for you here is the additional cost that will be incurred. And this does include not just salary, but also the benefit load associated with the dollar amounts. So just going through, we did put each position on its own line. The things I'll point out to you is that the first year, fiscal year 21-22, because it's January 1st, 2022, you're seeing half a year there. So just half of the fiscal year, since it will be January through June. And then you would see nothing on the Board of Commissioners amount down below for that year, because theirs would be effective in the next year. And so that's why you see just a simple doubling of the amount in the second year of whenever the increases occur. And then because there aren't, our other employees have things like merits, they have salary scales, which is not something we have here, which is why you're meeting to set salaries here. So just for those who are used to seeing these costing sheets from us, more the commissioners, that's why you're seeing those exact same amounts in 2 fiscal years. There's no other COLA, there's no other merit costed in here. It is just a continuation of the same base wage. So if we scroll down to the bottom, we do show you by fiscal year totals. and then a grand total over 3 fiscal years, 2.5 total years. And so that's right about 478,000. So I can answer any questions on that as we go through questions. If you have those questions now, if there's anything on costing, and then we can turn it back over to the committee to ask any questions about any of the materials you've seen.
Christine, I would just add that although the EOCB is recommending truing up for your assistance, we did have budget cost out a 2% COLA and a 3% COLA.
Correct. All right, Vice Chair Leslie, we'll turn it back over to you, I think. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Thank you very much for that presentation, Joshua and Darcy in particular, and really thank you to the whole elected officials compensation board for your hard work on this. We really appreciate the work that goes into it. Thank you to staff for the support that you provide as well. And are there questions from the committee? Commissioner Trieger?
Thank you so much. I'll just echo the appreciation to the volunteer committee members and to staff for their support. I have a couple of sort of structural questions, as this is my first time sitting through this particular thing. Going back to the references to Lane manual, can someone tell me, is the language in it now the original language, and or when was that last updated in terms of the timeline and cycle of when we have these conversations and these reviews? That's my first question.
I can try to answer that. So the Lane manual has always said what it has said. I shouldn't say always, but it's been that way for a significant amount of time. What occurred, excuse me, what occurred last year was some conversations with our county council about what the actual ORS says, which the ORS does say annually. And so that's, even though the Lane manual says as needed, and is also that the EOCB is required to meet in the year of a general election, the ORS actually is trumping that to say the EOCB actually needs to make a recommendation and meet each year. And we've defined year as our fiscal year, because it does not say that year has to be annual. So these were all conversations that occurred in 2021 and 2020 to really define when we actually needed to meet.
Thank you. One other question and then just a short comment. The other question is there any opportunity or is there language that would need to be addressed either in Lane manual or in ORS that might create an opportunity to enact some progressive over time increase rather than in one fell swoop getting certain positions trued up? Is there any opportunity that, not necessarily that we can do that in this particular go, but thinking forward?
I am a little gray on that, I'll be honest with you. We have made recommendations in the past for 2 years that the EOCB would still be required to meet, but we have, for instance, why we're meeting now, even though there was a board order that said for 2021 and 2022 there would be no increases, because the EOCB was required to meet. They now have the opportunity to make recommendations for you all to change that. Going beyond 2 years, I would suspect that the EOCB and the budget committee could make recommendations to that effect. How far out? I don't believe that there would be a limit, but the whole issue with the Lane manual and the way that it's worded, it just means that the elected officials need to vote on their own salaries before they have to stand for an election. That was the whole purpose of that.
Great, thank you. And then my final comment, again, this is a future look, not for this time around, is whether as more and more counties, Lane included, are recognizing the need to look at equity as part of our operations and particularly our pay scales. It would be very interesting to me in the future to look at our comparators and who is in these seats. I only know offhand who's in these seats here in Lane County, and I find it sort of ironic that as a one of just a few women electeds of the positions that we're looking at, you know, on average, all women earn about 83 cents to the dollar for men. And if we're going to talk, for instance, about Black women, it's 64 cents, Latinas, 57. So it's really interesting to me that we have a situation where that doesn't necessarily come into play currently, but as people are looking at running for office and career opportunities, I don't think we can continue to ignore the impacts of race and gender on wage scales across positions. So I just wanted to flag that. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Bozievich, you have a question? You're muted, Commissioner.
Had to go over and click to get the thing to come up to unmute. Sorry about that. I just want to point out the requirement to have the commissioners be effective after the general election is not Lane manual. It is in our county charter, in the home rule charter under section 25. So that even trumps ORS and many other things. We can only give ourselves a raise after a general election, so that we approve it beforehand, but it doesn't take effect till after. So we have to stand for election between. And we have in past had proposals that go at least 2 years out. I don't think we've gone beyond 2 with, having some of the increases or doing something less than one large jump to try and get back to equity in the elected positions. But one of the nice things about elected positions and their salaries is it doesn't matter what race or gender or anything you are. If you win the position, you get the salary that we decide.
Commissioner Burney?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, I don't have to look for a button. In the presentation, there were 2 assumptions that I would like to politely challenge. One assumption is that we need to increase salaries to attract people to run for office. And the other assumption, as if that's a motivation for running for office. I'm not saying it's not for some, but I know of no one that it is. Another assumption is that contemplating within, which is what units of government do for different positions, right? If they're professional positions, I understand that. But I'm curious what the average income for a family of 4 in Lane County is, because that's what I want to compare this to.
Is that a question maybe for later research and presentation by staff?
Well, apparently it is if no one can answer it. but if I may, that's the reason why, since I've been in office, I've voted no on salary increases, and not that I would carry the board one way or the other. Obviously, a majority have to vote. But as we look at wages generally, and what we in elective office, what motivates us, that's one thing. I worked as, and then but I worked as a high school teacher in the late 70s, and I was tenured. And I can tell you that some teachers worked 80 hours a week and dedicated their lives to it, and some floated by working 25 hours a week. And sometimes there's a variance there too. So my only concern is that we're treating this as if it is a professional position on a career ladder, and we have to look at comparative wages, and that's just a protocol that we follow. But I personally don't completely agree with it. I'm sorry, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Are there other questions from the committee? Seeing none, I do have a comment that it does strike me that there's a difference between the sheriff's situation with that compression and the required adjustment later in the year strikes me as a little bit different situation than the other positions. Other than that, though, I think I would just entertain a motion from the committee. Commissioner Bozovich? You're muted, Commissioner Bozovich.
Sorry about that. I'd like to move to approve the elected officials' compensation board recommendations for the assessor, DA, sheriff, and justice of the peace.
Second.
Any discussion? Point of order, because it's hard for me to see and tease out committee members here, before we take a vote on that motion, can staff tell me the number of committee members and what a quorum is that we're looking for, just so that we're clear? Because it's hard for me to see the way my screen is presented.
So this is Christine. So I'm looking really quick to see if we had anyone else join. I mean, you have 10 on your committee, so you do need a majority in order to pass a motion. And I don't believe we have either Herb in attendance or Chris Hazen.
Okay, so yeah. there are 8 here, so it will take 5 to pass a motion?
No, I believe your majority still stays the same. It's based on your size of committee.
Got it. Thank you.
So you will still have to have 6, yeah.
Got it. Thank you. Is there further discussion on the motion on the table?
A clarification, Vice Chair.
Yes.
Ms. Moody, to pass the motion, we only need a majority of members present, but to vote on the motion, we need a majority of the committee to vote. Is that correct? Is that correct? That would be Robert's rules.
This is where you're going to have more experience than me, Commissioner Farr. This is Christine, so I would defer to that answer.
Do we have county counsel on the line? I'm sorry. Do we have county counsel for final say on such a thing? I know we have commissioners with experience, but
I don't believe we have county counsel on the line, but I can text him if we need him to jump in. Why don't I do that and see if I can get an answer for us or have him join?
It would be pretty unusual to not do it with a majority of the members present. But you have to have a quorum to actually cast a vote, but the members present are the ones that decide the vote. But we only approximate, Robert.
Yeah. What?
Commissioner Bozovich, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. While we're waiting for response from county council, I'd like to just state why I made this motion, why I'm going to support it. Unlike the commissioners, these 4 positions require professional credentials really to perform well, and they run a department directly, supervise personnel, review people annually, hire people. As commissioners, we're a committee of 5 that hire 3 people. The sheriff's running a department of a couple hundred, the assessor's responsible for collecting all of our taxes and appraising over 177 tax accounts, 177,000 tax accounts. And the DA has to be an attorney licensed to practice law in the state of Oregon. These positions need to have competitive salaries to attract people with those qualifications to run. And if you look at these kind of races across Oregon, they rarely attract more than 2 people that file, if they get 2. Quite often they run unopposed. Unlike the commissioners' races, which we're already seeing at least 2, if not 3 or more candidates filing for each position, even when incumbents are involved. So that's why I support the increases for these 4 positions, is to keep them competitive in the market, not only compared to other counties, but these are skills that can be utilized in the private sector. I guarantee somebody with a DA's skill could make far more in a private law firm than as a DA. So that's why I support the 4 increases. Thank you.
I see Alana Holmes, your hand is up.
Thank you. I ran down the hall and I grabbed our county counsel. If you still have a question as to quorum, he's available to try to answer that right now if you'd like to present something to our county counsel.
Is he going to join the meeting, Alana? Sorry, this is Christine. I also do have the information. I'm texting him. I don't know if he has the meeting to be able to log into, but I can provide you with the information that Budget Committee is different than Robert's Rules of Order. We do have the information that the majority still holds unless there is a commissioner seat vacant. So because we have our seats filled for commissioners, then it still would need to be a majority of the committee of 10 members in order to take action.
Thank you, Christine, for finding that.
Oh, and I saw him coming on camera there with Alana, but yeah.
Okay. Anything else needed for our county council?
I think we got that. Go ahead, Pat.
Question, Christine. Thank you, Vice Chair. How is that codified? That the Budget Committee has to be the full membership, a majority of the full membership. Where is that codified?
This is information put out by the Oregon Department of Revenue. They are charged in statute with interpreting budget law. Yeah, so I can send you a sheet that has little, a good description for us of what a quorum is and when a majority is and when the seats are vacant.
Yes. I do not need proof beyond your word, Christine. Thank you.
That's all right.
Christine, is that chapter 308? I think it is, isn't it?
Typically budget laws in 294, but it could well be that that's where we're going to talk about the quorum. Yeah.
Thank you for those clarifications. If I understand this correctly, we have a motion on the table and seconded that would suggest that would true up the salaries of the assessor, the DA, the justice of the peace, and the sheriff, according to the recommendations of the elected officials compensation board. And we require 6 votes of the committee in order to approve that motion. Am I understanding this correctly, Christine?
Correct.
Okay. Is there further discussion? Oh, I see your hand there, Darcy.
So just to clarify, isn't the budget committee making a recommendation to forward their recommendations to the Board of Commissioners? They're not actually approving them? Okay.
Thank you. I stand corrected. Yes, that's my inexperience in the role to phrase it properly. Thank you, Darcy. I appreciate that correction. Yes, a vote of 6 in support would then be the committee's approval to forward this to the Board of Commissioners for their adoption, for their consideration of adoption. Thank you for that. So if there's no further discussion, I think we're ready to vote on this. Thank you. So all in favor of accepting the recommendation of the elected officials compensation board to forward the truing up of the assessor, DA, justice of the peace, and sheriff's compensation going forward, please indicate by raising your hand.
I don't know which way you wanted to raise a hand.
Yeah, fair enough. Can I, is staff counting these? It's hard for me to see.
Let me do that. Did everybody use the hand raise function?
Oh, fair enough. You want the hand raise function? No.
Sorry, I can do one.
Sorry, Vice Chair. Have we lost Commissioner Buck? Oh, I see her virtual. No, I don't. Yeah, I see her virtual hand now. Thank you.
I see her real hand too.
Now
you do have 6 hands up, Vice Chair.
Thank you for that. I'm trying to raise mine but I am failing miserably in this attempt. So may I say it with my voice that my hand is raised, even though my little yellow hand is not accessible to me in this moment. Yes. Thank you. Okay.
Opposed?
At this point, I would entertain a motion regarding the commissioner's salary.
Chair, you may just want to verify there were no opposed to the prior.
Thank you for bailing me out there. Yes, for the record, let the record show there were no opposed. Or I could call for, are there any opposed? Maybe I should call for that. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, then I can report that there were none opposed. Thank you. So moving forward on the question of the commissioner's compensation, is there a motion that anyone would like to make? In the absence of a motion, what happens?
Dies for lack of motion. No, that's not accurate.
Does this require require response by the committee, or we leave it to the Board of Commissioners now?
This is Christine. I probably would jump in. I believe that this is where our lane manual talks about this going through the budget committee for a recommendation to the board. So I don't know if other staff have another opinion, but I do think there's, is the recommendation no increase? Is it something? Yeah, I don't know how the board would then take that information.
Commissioner Farr?
Thank you. You know, beyond the 100% increase or whatever the huge percentage was, there is a 2% or a 3% option for the budget committee to consider as a recommendation. So I'm not sure if everybody knew that. So a motion for 2 or 3% could be moved beyond the other, or no motion at all, which would leave it status quo, I would suspect.
Darcy Dillon, would you like to speak? I see your hands up.
Thank you. What I would say, what I have seen in the past is that the budget committee did not forward any recommendations to the board in the past. So they actually didn't even make a motion to not increase. They made a motion not to make a recommendation. So I don't know if that's one and the same. But having heard what Christine said, I'm wondering if there has to be an official, we are not going to accept the recommendations.
From what I heard, it sounds like we're not required to put that forward, but I think Christine could correct me if I misunderstood that. I see Commissioner Burney's hand is up.
Yes, I'm going to refer to my manual of common sense, not Robert's Rules of Order, which means this is probably incorrect. But it seems to me, I'm only for myself, I wouldn't make any motion on this until I learned what the average income for a family of 4 in Lane County is. That's just a comparative I would look at. It certainly seems to me that if we have the ability as a budget committee not to make a recommendation on this, period. And then that rests with the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
I see Commissioner Buck's hand is up.
Thank you. I see we don't really have our full committee with us today, which is too bad because I really would like to hear what they have to say on this. It's always challenging to talk about raising your own salary. And this always makes these meetings a bit tricky, and probably will be when we get to the Board of Commissioners as well. I do feel like we have been very dedicated to market adjustments for our staff, both represented and unrepresented. And we've done COLAs. At the very least, I think it would be fair to move forward something regarding a COLA adjustment, especially given the cost of living increases that are going around that everybody's experiencing. So we can at least keep up on that end. The timing of this is really challenging, of course, but that's my 2 cents.
I do not see other hands raised, and we are at the 10:30 point. So without a motion, I think, oh, now some hands have raised. Commissioner Trieger.
Thank you. I wonder if we want to, if Darcy has something procedural that would help beforehand, but I was going to, for the purposes of moving this along, to make a motion around a COLA, because ultimately then it is the board that gets to finally make the decision whether to institute it, and gives us an opportunity to have more conversation. But Darcy, if you have something to say that might inform that, I'm happy to step out of the queue for that.
Go ahead, Darcy.
I just wanted to ask Commissioner Farr to give me direction on how to prepare the board orders. There's been different potential ways of doing it, whether each position is on a separate board order or whether the non-commissioner positions are on one board order and commissioners are on another board order. That's all I wanted to ask, so didn't want to forget that.
And thank you for asking me, Darcy. My opinion, and we take turns being chair. It's my turn this year. My opinion would be to prepare a separate order for each of the 4 elected official positions. So we have a separate vote for each one, and then whatever happens with the commission, we use that as a 5th vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Trieger.
Yeah, then for the purposes of moving us along in absolute clarity, I'll just make a motion that the Budget Committee, using the information provided by the EOCB, forward a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to increase, to provide a 2% COLA to county commissioners.
Second.
Was that Bruce that seconded?
I did, yes.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing no hands, I'm scrolling down. I'll call for a vote on that recommendation. The motion on the floor, made by Commissioner Trieger, seconded by Bruce Weber, committee member Bruce Weber, is to approve a 2% COLA for the Board of Commissioners and for the county commissioners. That would then be forwarded to the board for their approval. Any further discussion? All in favor say signify by raising your hand if you can find it. I can't find mine, so I'm just going to have to do this right here. Cleared out of my options.
Vice Chair, this is Christine. I am counting 5 hands raised.
Thank you. All opposed? Oh, yeah. Sorry, lowering all the hands, and then I have to ask, all opposed, please signify by raising your hand.
One opposed.
One opposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2. I saw 2
opposed. 2 opposed. Yeah.
There it is. Thank you. So that motion fails to pass, and with, I guess it was, if there are 6 of us here, that would be, I saw 5 in favor and 2 opposed. So somehow there's 7 of us here.
There are 7 of you, yes.
Then the motion fails to move forward to the board.
It's kind of like the U.S. Senate where the minority rules.
We are past time. There is an item on the agenda for committee business. I wonder if there is any, or if it's, otherwise I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Chair Leslie, I think you have, oh, Commissioner Bozovich did have his hand up, but he did take it down. So I think just very briefly, the other item today, and I'll just very briefly touch on it, is that we did have a survey out to the Budget Committee about your process for 22-23. So I'm going to hit send on a document to you that is a summary of those survey results. We did have 7 responses. And overall, I'll just briefly state that there were some requests for changes, nothing too dramatic. I think it's the same thing that you heard together as a committee, things around department presentations and where that focus lies, and having more question answer time during meetings, potentially making some slight changes to the written questions, but part of that could also be the question process of having more time during the meetings. So I think what we will do is take this back as staff. I'll meet with Steve Mokrahajski, and we will come up with some suggestions for you on what the process looks like. You did see a draft presentation that we were proposing, and that was positively received. So we'll follow something in that structure. So I think we'll have more contact with you on that and the pre-meeting that we have in April, but you will, not just likely, you will see some emails from us about that process here as we get closer to it. So unless there's any questions on that, I think we can just have that be the report at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. I want to express my deep gratitude to the Elected Officials Compensation Board for your efforts. Thank you for helping us move forward in an appropriate way. It is important that we review this. Your work is deeply appreciated by me, and I'm sure all of the committee members. Thanks to staff for all the support you provide to these things, and thanks to our budget committee as well for your volunteer time here with us, especially the citizen committee members. And with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I need a second for that? I'm not exactly sure. I'll call this meeting adjourned of the Wednesday, January 19th, 2022 Lane County Budget Committee meeting.